What's up, guys? Today I'm gonna do an initial impressions video on this particular pen right here. This pen is not mine. Part of me kind of wish it was, but this actually belongs to a friend of mine. I happen to be borrowing it slash kind of working on the pen for him. So since I have it in my possession and I've kind of been writing around with it for a little bit, messing around with it. I figured I would do an initial impressions video. This happens to be as you can see from the white star, a Montblanc, and this is actually a 149 sized pen, and this is actually the 90th anniversary pen, which I believe came out this year. Yes, it should have came out this year. Actually, just a few months ago. I remember there was like a whole event about celebrating the 90th anniversary. I don't know how many of these anniversary pens Montblanc has come out with. I know of this 90th anniversary, and I know they also came out with a 75th anniversary edition, a few versions of that actually. But what makes this 90th anniversary special, obviously, other than the 90th anniversary nib design that's featured on the nib, is that it is actually plated with a rose gold. I'm not really sure how well it's gonna really show in the lighting, but if you compare, on top right here I have my this is my 70s to 80s, I think early 80s era 146 with the standard gold furniture. You can see that the coloration is slightly different. It's especially more noticeable on the nib itself. Let me see if I can get a close-up view of the nibs. Get it to focus. You see at certain angles it's just slightly more reddish tinted than on the 146 because it is rose gold plated. For some reason, I guess around this year, the rose gold has become kind of popular. I know Twisby came out with a 580 that was rose gold plated. Recently, I saw Platinum released a Century pen that's like a demonstrator, also with a rose gold gold plated furniture and nib. Personally, for me, I'm not a huge fan of rose gold. It does look kind of nice in that, it's a little different. It's a little darker than the standard yellow gold. And actually, on this 146 nib, it's actually developed like a pretty nice patina. So it's not actually like a very bright. Oh, come on. It's not actually a very bright yellow gold anymore. There's slight reddish overtones to it. I guess this nib is like a 14 karat nib, so there's probably some copper that's actually in the mix of the alloy of metals that's mixed in with the gold, and gives it kind of like a reddish patina to it. That I don't mind as much. The rose gold, probably not my preference. If I were to get a 149 size pen, I would probably just get a standard 149. Or, I mean, honestly, my Grail 149 pen would be the 75th anniversary, the limited edition version with the mother of pearl star, and the 75th anniversary. I think has a nicer nib design to it, and also it has like a diamond on along this. I think it has like a wider cap. A wider clip band that has like a diamond, a small diamond impregnated into it. So overall, I think that pen design looks a little more elegant, and it just looks better in my mind. But of course, that pen right now is selling for I think around like $2,000. This rose gold version, I believe, if you were to buy it direct from Montblanc, from a boutique, it's not that much more expensive. I think it's like, I mean, I didn't go buy it myself, but I think my friend said it was only like $40 more expensive, or like $40 to $100 more expensive than the standard 149. He has a 149 already. When he saw this 90th anniversary edition come out, I think he kind of really likes the rose gold, and that's why he went ahead and bought it. This one happens to be like his first 4-digit pen. Like it cost him like just over $1,000 after tax and everything, of course. Meanwhile, I think he paid just under $1,000 for his original 149. For me, handling this pen, it's pretty big, but it's very well balanced. And one of the big things I don't like about like the 146 really, and the like the Pelican M800. I've never really handled a M1000 for any length of time, but the 146 and the M800 are a little back heavy. Obviously in this pen there is a brass plug that's threaded in actually, and that's your piston mechanism. It does make the pen a little more back heavy. With the 149, I don't really get that feeling. It is a very thick pen. It's very comfortable to write with. It has a huge nib, which I think looks really, really gorgeous. Like this is probably one of the biggest nibs out there. Maybe minus the M1000 nib, which I think is slightly longer but not as wide. But in my hand, this actually feels very well balanced, even though I'm pretty sure it is also a brass thread piston mechanism in here. Writing it for a long length of time, no issues. And actually, the custom pen that I had made, I had it based around the 149 size because when I had handled one in the past, I felt it was very comfortable to write with, and the custom pen that I ordered, I wanted to have as like a long-term workhorse writing pen where I could just write for extended periods of time without fatiguing my hand. I actually have here here is my Pelican M600. So you can see the graduation in size, the M600 being the smallest pen. Then you have the 146, which I think is generally considered to be around the same size as the M800, and then the 149 and the M1000 would be very similar in size. So with a pen like this size, it's very convenient to carry, and it is pretty comfortable in the hands. But after writing for around like half an hour non-stop, my hand will start to cramp up slightly, and on a regular everyday writing basis, it's not a big deal because I'm generally not writing for that extended period of time. But when I'm writing, either journaling or whatever, that does kind of become an issue, and that's why the custom pen I got, which I will do a video on it soon. I kind of want to do a video of it. Actually, I have it right here. Just to show you guys the size comparison, that's the custom pen I got from Sean Newton. You can see it's very similar in size because I kind of had it based around the 149. I'll go into more in depth about it in this video. I've been working on this a little bit, and I will get the video done like within the next week or so before I have to return this pen. But it's just a very comfortable and well balanced pen to write with. And actually, if you look at even the finial, the star pattern, the 149 finial almost looks proper. It looks like the Montblanc star is actually well balanced. I don't personally think it's too small on the finial. Versus with the 146, I feel it is kind of like the star is a little too big. Now the stars, different generation of pens, they've probably varied slightly, but they are generally around the same size. It's just that because this is a much narrower pen here, it just looks bigger because it fills the top of the finial more. So for me, I haven't really had a chance to play with this pen for a long time. In terms of how it writes pretty well. My friend had initially complained about it not writing well, and I believe he went to Montblanc and they had it fixed or replaced or whatever. He's still not very happy with it, and that's why I kind of just borrowed it from him, and I'm going to tweak and tune around with the nib a little bit to see if I can get it to write like he would. He did force himself to carry it while his original 149 was out for repair work. So now that he's gotten that back, this one he's basically not seen, and it's kind of funny because it's his most expensive pen, and he really likes the looks, but he just doesn't like how it writes. In terms of how it writes, it's relatively smooth. He kind of tried working on it a little bit himself, so there's a slight hint of feedback, which I don't think was probably there when the pen came originally from the boutique. In terms of my 146, I don't think any work has ever been done to this nib. Looking at the nib underneath the loop, it looks very much like how I would think it would come from the factory. So I don't think that this wrote with any kind of feedback at all when it came from the Montblanc store. Granted, I know my friend doesn't particularly like super smooth nibs, so he probably wanted to rough it up a little bit to get a little bit more feedback. But it still writes very nice. You know, I say there's a little feedback, but that's not to say it's very scratchy. When I was writing it on Rhodia dot pad, you can feel the nib, and it's a pretty like wet, broad writer. I think this is supposed to be either a fine or a medium nib, but it almost writes like a medium to broad. You know, I currently have a steel M200 nib here that I ground to a medium stub, and this pen actually writes broader than that, even though when you look at the tines, it seems like the tine width on the 149 is slightly narrower than on this, but because it writes so wet, and also because like of how large the nib is, the tines probably spread a little bit more as I'm writing, regardless of how much I try to not have any pressure down on it. It probably spreads the tines a little bit and makes it write wetter and broader than what the actual nib size is. But it just writes very well. And you know, the Montblanc 149 kind of has this reputation of people thinking it's a overly large pen. You know, the nib is huge, it's too thick. I don't really think that's the case. I feel like a lot of people, if some people, they may have smaller hands and they may not find it particularly comfortable to write with this pen, and that's fine. But it's kind of unfair for people to critique this pen without really getting to experience it first. You know, now I can understand, like, in terms of the price, yes, it's a very expensively priced pen. And if you don't like the pen because of that reason, I can totally understand that. You know, a lot of people don't like the 146 because they feel it's a very expensive pen. These, I think, generally 149s, obviously not the limited edition ones, but the regular ones you can get on the secondhand market for around $400, which is high. You know, that's basically ranking up to be like one of the most expensive pens I would have bought. But it's not excessively so, because generally Montblancs have a pretty decent resale value. And if you compare it to other pens, like if you were to buy like a large Homo sapiens new, or if you were to buy a Pelican M1000 new, you know, you're looking around the same ballpark in terms of street prices. You know, granted, yeah, you kind of have to buy used pen versus getting a new pen, but you know, you can always have it serviced out to Montblanc, and if you pay the service fee or whatever, they'll essentially replace all the plastic components, keep the clip and the gold nib, and you get a brand new pen. So, not terrible. You're kind of paying for that service when you first put in that large initial price for the pen. So that's it for this video. Just like I said, an initial impressions video. Very enjoyable pen to write with. I definitely feel like, you know, like my hands are not large and I have pretty short fingers, and I find this very comfortable to write with. I can only imagine people with larger hands would find this even more so compared to like an M600 size pen. And I would encourage people to, you know, if you've never tried writing with a 149, don't knock it. You know, I actually feel like this pen, even though it is bigger, a little bit more obnoxious, it does kind of feel better in hand and writes better than my 146. And if you've never written with the pens, you can't really complain that the specifications and the dimensions of the pens are bad, because you just don't know until you try it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks.